Hey everybody, Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show that's freeing America one enslaved mind at a time, standing for God, family, country. And we're here to help you and your family as well as improve the country because we're going to talk about what's really going on in the crypto world with Bitcoin and all the rest. A lot of people are asking questions. There's a lot of speculation out there. So from My Digital Money, we have Guy Gottschalk on. He's the CEO, and we're going to have a very frank discussion here. Now, I think the possibilities lying ahead are tremendous. I think the upside is unmistakably terrific. It's hard to time the market. That's my perception. Guy, welcome to the show. Glad to have you back on. And what do you think about my opening here and what I said? Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, and thanks for having me as always. Yeah, I think Bitcoin is as I always say on your show, is a really good alternative to the dollar, and it's more about protection, not speculation. And it's a fixed supply, so there's a lot of reasons, supply and demand. We can get deep into why I think that's gonna make the price go up. So it's just a matter of time. And it's one way to protect yourself. You diversify, and right now we've been in a consolidation phase. So Bitcoin went from 124, now we're at low 70s. So we've been consolidating for a while, and it always goes back to where it was, right? So um, that's a 70% increase if we go back to where we were just in October. And so yeah, I totally agree that it's a matter of time, and I think it's a good alternative to look at and to, be educated on that.
Guy, could I get you to get just a little closer to your mic? You're
Yep.
not coming in real faint, but
All
just
right. Can you hear me now?
much better. Thank you.
There you go.
Um, well, I think one of the things that's driving everything, including the Bitcoin world, is the debt crisis and most of all, the future of the dollar. I mean, we're in trouble oil-wise, and we're a petroleum-based economy, and this war is going on. Strait of Hormuz is closed, and the dollar is really beginning to feel the stress. As the dollar stresses, what does that do to the potential for crypto and Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, it is exploding, right? And in terms of the potential, I mean, you know all the stats. I mean, your audience is very familiar. Our national debt,
Mhm.
just an interest hit 1 trillion this year, right? And which is an all-time high. And it's on track to reach 2.1 trillion by 2036 in terms of just interest payments, right? The debt, we're like close to 30 trillion now. It's 101% of GDP. And it's projected to be 120% by 2036, right? And so, if you're looking at the numbers, and there's no real good way out of it, um, I think the Fed's ability to fight inflation is constrained, the more, we go into the debt raises, right? And it's basically a higher for longer inflation. Essentially the Fed is trapped, they have to print to survive or crash the system. Um, and so either way, the dollar loses. And the case for alternative assets that have a fixed supply, like gold and Bitcoin, um, it's really the one of the only ways to protect yourself from that. And we can get into kind of the supply and demand of Bitcoin, but I mean, it's so constrained, even compared to gold and other assets, that it has to go up, as this continues to go downhill. This being the dollar. So
No, I totally agree with that. I think the possibilities there are endless because people are also going to seek alternatives from something that is failing. And one of the things that scares me is the Dodd-Frank Law 2010 that says the banks can basically keep anything associated with the bank, whether it's a retirement account like an IRA or 401k, or they can just take your savings, or they can bail you in at a percentage. And it's now the law. And I fear what the banks are going to do. In fact, JP Morgan right now, they're already canceling accounts of people for for what social media postings. So the banks are beginning to exercise their authority. And to me, alternative investments from precious metals to crypto really provides an alternative and a safe haven from that, don't you think?
Yeah, and all around the world, right? There are countries where, people just don't have access, and their currency is hyperinflated, and so their only way to survive is through something like Bitcoin, and all they need is a smartphone, to do it. They don't need, a fancy credit score or anything like that. And it's just, there's much more access. And so for us, people like you and me, it's easier to open a bank account. But still, like you said, there are risks there, right? Of our accounts getting frozen or closed. And so this is an alternative. And I think it's important to adopt this, just to keep the financial system honest. Because if people have an alternative, um, then that takes leverage away, right, from the people that control the traditional monetary system.
Yeah, it really does. And I don't see, I mean, let's just look at the crisis in the Iranian war. You've got the Strait of Hormuz closed. The last tanker left arrived last week in America, because those tankers can go 5 to 10 miles an hour. I mean, they're incredibly slow. And so now we're living on existing oil, and the crude in our country, a lot of it's too heavy for our refineries. We export that to other nations, and we have to import still for our oil needs. I know Trump likes to say we have more oil than we can use. That's true, but you don't have more usable oil than you can
Mhm.
use. And so to me, the economic crisis is just getting started, and I think people are going to swarm to alternative investments. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean it's a matter of time. I think shows like this will help, make sure that people swarm to it. But I think institutions are the ones that are really swarming to it. Retail is not as dominant as it used to be. If you look at institutions right now, 18.6% of the entire supply is owned by institutions, or government, right? Not retail individuals. And that is increasing every single day, at a crazy rate, right? And I'm looking at projections here, and over the next 6 years, the demand is projected to reach 3 trillion over 6 years, which far outpaces the amount of new Bitcoin that's produced. There's going to be about 700,000 Bitcoins produced over that same period. So that's about 70 billion versus the 3 trillion, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then, if you look at all kinds of data, like the survey I have here, it says 68% of institutional investors now either hold or plan to invest in Bitcoin. Um, and if you're looking at all these other, there's a bunch of big institutions that have published their plans, in terms of how much Bitcoin they're going to buy, right? And so this is not even speculation. There's data to show that institutional demand is increasing, way faster, about 2.8 right now. It's at 2.8 times the new mining supply.
Wow.
Um, so, that's where I think the big price surge is going to come from, the institutions.
Yeah, well, that supply and demand, you just mentioned that 2.5 time demand over supply is fantastic in terms of investment potential. And I couldn't agree with you more. And even if the war were to end today with the Strait of Hormuz problem, we still have 3 to 4 months of real difficult times to go through because that's our catch-up period.
Yeah,
Uh,
and even aside from the war, I mean, it's a cycle. Our, debt continues to rise, um, regardless. Yeah, the war makes it worse, and I think this is a good time to buy because of that, because the price is going down, and you're really buying at a discount. So it's a good time to get in. But long term, even if the war ends and we get into a favorable situation, it's all temporary. I think our monetary system is built in a way that you have to look at these assets, right? And it's, a lot of times we call these types of assets, here internally, like a schmuck insurance. You've probably heard. It's like even if you just buy a little bit, right? 10 years, if it goes up times 10, at least you're not kicking yourself too hard. So, at least buy what you can afford to lose is our belief.
Well, I totally agree. So some of that discretionary income needs to go to this. There's no question because I look at the government and their actions. I see two things here. Let's talk about the first one. You got the new Fed chair, Mr. Worth,
Hmm.
and he's saying, "Yeah, we got to deal with this debt." Well, the way to deal with the debt, according to him, and he doesn't say it this bluntly, but this is how he ends up, is that we have to inflate the economy to make the value of the debt go down and real spending power. So, inflation goes up. What are people going to do? They're going to look for the alternative. And I'm
Yep.
saying if people get into crypto and other things that are alternatives right now, they're going to be way ahead of the game because they're going to beat the rush.
Right. And he hasn't been sworn in yet, but he will be sworn in soon. And while in June there's a Fed meeting and most people think, the rates will stay the same, he's likely to reduce the rate at least one time this year because
Hmm.
he's pretty dovish. And going forward, right, that's how he's gonna, deal with the problem, right, is reducing the rates and essentially contributing to inflation. So I think once that one rate cut comes, that might spark, that spike that you're talking about.
I think so too. And then the other thing that I look at here is I always wonder too, what does the Trump administration know that we don't yet realize? And I think when they went to stablecoin and they've endorsed the use of crypto officially after the government used to put people in prison for it,
Hmm.
now they're endorsing it. They know something we don't. I think we're going to see more emphasis on digital,
Oh,
and
for sure.
that's going to enter into the crypto world too, isn't it?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, since we passed the Genius Act last year, where stable coins are more regulated, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I probably could find them, but the volumes are, really gone through the roof.
Hmm.
So adoption is there. Oh, I see. Okay, 33. So transaction volume hit 33 trillion in 2025, up 72% year over year. Analysts project another 56% growth in 2026 to roughly 420 billion in supply. Um, and also, there's another, now that you mentioned stablecoins, there's another interesting story. I'm sure you hear all the hype around AI, right? Um, there's AI agents that are, doing all kinds of automatic work. And the only way for them to transact is they can't open a bank account, right? They don't have a passport. They can't, know your customer. But they can use crypto. That's the only way they can transact. And so you have AI agents already, they've already executed 176 million blockchain transactions in the past year. And that's going up. And the reason why this matters is that this supply demand I was talking about is going to be, there's going to be even more demand because of these AI agents. And I'm seeing McKinsey projects, they call it agentic commerce, will reach 3 to 5 trillion globally by 2030. And if autonomous agents eventually outnumber human transactors, which many in the industry now predict, the total volume flowing through crypto rails could dwarf the current levels. So basically, there's an entire new buyer class that we're not even factoring into this supply demand that you and I were just talking about. So that's something to kind of think about as well. If you're really thinking long term, right? You're thinking, you want to invest for the next 15, 20 years in an IRA, uh, that's something to take into account, right? And then there's also this whole thing of tokenization, which we can get into if
Yeah,
you're
let's do
interested.
that. Let's go there.
Yeah, so the AI agents is one thing that's I think gonna really increase adoption of Bitcoin, and now tokenization is another. And I might have talked about it in the past on your show, but just to remind everybody, real world asset tokenization, it's basically taking real world assets like real estate, treasury bonds, gold, private equity, and putting it onto the blockchain as digital tokens. So think of it as like a deed or a stock certificate that lives on the blockchain. It's like a digital ledger, and it can be traded 24/7 with no middleman. And so you already have U.S. Treasuries. That's the biggest use case, right? There's about 19 to 36 billion dollars already of U.S. Treasuries out there. So uh, this is a real thing that's happening. There's 420% increase in since January 2025 in tokenized assets. So this is something that's increasing as we speak. So yeah, this is not to be discounted in terms of demand for Bitcoin and for crypto in general.
Some of our friends from the World Economic Forum want to tokenize everything, including the ground you stand on and the air you
Yep.
breathe. I'm not
Hmm.
joking when I say that.
I know.
I don't think that's going to happen anytime in the near future, but this is the mindset of the what they think are the ruling elite. So
Yeah. And by
the
the way, I was wrong. It wasn't 19. It's basically US Treasuries went from 3.9 billion to over 15 billion
wow.
in the past was it in the past year, I guess. So um yeah, there's real use cases for, US Treasuries. I mean, if you're on the kind of blockchain, you're doing all kinds of DeFi stuff, which is like, you could do a decentralized loan. You can use it as collateral and still earn the 4 to 5%, right? And then you can also transfer it within, instantly to somebody else. So there's real reasons to have it. You and I probably don't need it right now, but there's a whole world out there of people transacting in crypto that do need it. And that's only increasing.
Well, you mentioned earlier about institutions acquiring, and my favorite story is Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan. And he would one time say, "I'll fire any of my employees I find out that
Right.
are in crypto." And now the banks are gathering crypto like there's no tomorrow.
Yep, totally. Yeah, and that's why, it's you watch what they do, know what they say.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
And yeah, it's you have these a lot of corporations are doing the micro strategy of holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So that's happening more and more. So uh, that's contributing.
Do you think with the AI agents that you mentioned, are the crypto transactions, are they AI to public and private, or is it AI to AI, or how does that work?
I mean, it's both. It's for any reason you can think of. Like I'll even give you an example. I don't know if it's the best example, but it's, an AI agent might need to access the weather for whatever application it's doing, right? And so it needs to, use an API, a weather API, and it needs to pay for it. Um, and it might not be worth it to do it with a bank transaction because it might get charged 30 cents for a transaction. But if it's paying 3 cents for a weather API, it doesn't make sense to pay 30 cents. But with crypto, it's a fraction of the cost. So, these are the types of use cases where, it's just accessing other software it needs to pay because it's a lot of the software models, it's like you pay per usage. So every time I want to get a piece of data, I have to pay for it. And so that's what's driving a lot of it is just, these AI agents needing access to services.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing I'm really concerned about, and I'm concerned about it more for other people than myself because I haven't let myself enter into this. But there are a lot of people out there that have 401ks and IRAs. And I'm very concerned about how solid they are going forward. And since the banks can control them, if you allow that to happen, then of course, even maintaining the value and keeping control of it becomes an issue. Does Bitcoin have a relationship at all with IRAs and 401ks?
Well, with My Digital Money, we do allow you to purchase Bitcoin within an IRA. So that risk is still there because that IRA, it's basically owned by our partner Equity Trust. They've been around since 1974. So, what you're saying, there's always a risk that they can, freeze an account, but it's never happened in history. And I think that's going to be the last account to be frozen, right? They'll freeze your regular bank account before they'll freeze your IRA. It's
Yeah,
more
exactly.
protected.
They'll go out of business if they did that.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
protected and yeah, but the key thing is that a lot of IRAs and 401ks, they're investing in, mutual funds or, in ETFs, and those things you don't actually own the underlying asset. So if there's a financial collapse or, something happens, you're way more at risk because you don't actually own the asset. With us, you actually legally own the Bitcoin that's in your portfolio. So, they can't just take it away because it's decoupled from their business operations, right? It's because
Exactly.
you actually own it. And so that's the big difference here is that, you in our IRA, you don't own a Bitcoin ETF. You actually own the Bitcoin or Ethereum or any number of cryptocurrencies we have available.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's a great point. You just hit some of the benefits and risks. That was going to be my next question on that, but you absolutely did. Here's something that people ask me from my audience. because occasionally, I'll talk about crypto and the opportunities and so forth. And they'll ask me questions like, okay, so if I go ahead and get the crypto and it's gone up tremendously and I do need some operating money, okay, and I don't want to spend crypto or not everything I want to spend it on takes crypto, how do I cash it in? What do you tell people about that?
Yeah, so if you want to cash it in, let's say you have it in an IRA, then you have to sell it, and then you have to take a distribution. There would be, a penalty. But if you have a regular cash account, like, you can have with us as well, you sell it, you would have to pay capital gains, taxes on it, but you essentially then just withdraw it, into your bank account, and then you can use those funds. So it's just like, any account like you might have with an exchange, you log on, you click on the asset and you sell. You can choose any dollar amount and you could take the money out. But, how the taxes, it really depends if it's an IRA or if it's a Roth IRA,
Sure.
obviously there's no taxes, but you might, have a penalty if you're taking it before your retirement age.
If it's just a regular cash account, um, um, a liquid account,
Mhm.
do crypto companies typically buy back if people want to cash?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you could sell at any time. I mean, and these are all highly liquid. So, Bitcoin or any cryptocurrencies you can sell
Hmm.
at any time. You can go on our platform and you know, trade 22 hours a day. Um, and so, yeah, you could sell it.
Okay, but the companies are like My Digital Money, they'll actually buy that back.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
because
Yeah.
that's a question I get a lot, and that's the answer that I've given, and I'm glad you confirmed I was telling the right thing. But I started thinking the other day, am I really right about that? So I made a mental note to
Yeah, I mean,
ask you.
it also depends on the cryptocurrency. So all the cryptocurrencies that we hold, you can buy, you could sell it. There's no issue. But if you're buying like a, new cryptocurrency, it's very speculative. It might be harder to sell, right? But yeah, everything that we have is something that is, IRA compliant, so it's been vetted,
Okay.
meaning there's sufficient liquidity, and there's it's been around for long enough. The technology is solid. It's not like a fly-by-night, cryptocurrency.
Okay. And so if you were to look at crypto world right now, I'm seeing signs, I think it's really going to start to come out and explode. Which brands of crypto and Bitcoin do you think are going to do well early on?
Well, so Bitcoin is obviously the best one, and
Yeah.
I think that's the safest one. There are ones that might grow at a faster rate, but they don't have the same, longevity. But Ethereum is always a good one because it's the second. XRP is one that it's really embedded within institutions, right? And it's, essentially, uh, positioned as a replacement to SWIFT, right, which is the international,
Right.
transfer protocol. So that one, because it has institutional adoption, it's slated to do really well. And there's a lot of reasons, a lot of partnerships, and a lot of, events happening around it, which, is a reason why people think it's going to do well. Um, and then there's other ones, there's, Stellar and, Polkadot. There's a bunch of them, but I think that, those three, like XRP, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, are ones that I think are going to do well.
Yeah, XRP and Bitcoin would have been the two that I would have mentioned just based on what I'm hearing anecdotally with investors.
Right.
Um, do you think that what's going to happen first? The anticipatory buy of real big financial problems in America, so people are seeking an alternative and they go to crypto. Is it going to be that, or is it going to be, oh, we start to experience at least a semi-recession or a crash of some sort, and then people do it as a reaction? Which do you think will mostly come first?
I think the first one. I think, and again, I think it's institutions that are really smart, and so they are already doing it. Um, I think with retail, people are more reactionary, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They might wait for a crash, but I think institutions are not going to wait. They're going to, um, you know, And that's why this is a good opportunity because it's not fully mainstream on the retail side. And so I think if you're smart enough to get in, especially now, then you'll benefit before there's a big
MSN.
crash, right? Don't
Okay.
wait for the crash.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Ask people in 1929 about that, my own family
Yeah.
included. Um, Bill Gates came out this morning on MSN and he said, you know, there's only going to be about 4 or 5 careers left because of AI. Now, first of all, I think that's an exaggeration, at least early on.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
let's assume he's right for a second. Do you think that's going to make some people? Because I got to admit, maybe I'm a little paranoid, but I'm thinking right now, I know people are going to flee the dollar as trouble happens. And if only about 5 careers are left, or even 25 careers are left, you're going to create a desperate situation from retail, consumerism, and so forth. And there's going to be people like me sit back and say, man, I need to jump out of this boat right now before it sinks. And if it's really going to all come crumbling down, I better get into crypto and I better do something about it. So at least I have a rising income in response to the disaster and I'm not left holding the bag and sinking with everybody else. How realistic is that viewpoint?
Well, first of all, if you do believe that, then Bitcoin is good because then you're going to have a bunch of AI agents, like I said earlier, and the only way for them to transact is in crypto, right? And so that's another reason why, it would be good to buy it. Uh, but I do think it's exaggerated. I think, if you have a physical job, obviously you're more safe than if your job is digital, because it's going to take much longer to replace, any physical job. That has to do with, whether it's electrician or, HVAC or, construction. Those are going to take, way longer. Um, Digital is much easier to replace, if you're doing something in software or anything on the computer. Uh, but, I don't know. I think it's exaggerated. I think at some point, people might get sick of AI a little bit and value that human touch as well.
They already are.
Yeah.
You may have seen the protests around the country against the data centers eating up the electricity, driving the rates up, taking the water, and so forth. And it's a big controversy right now with AI. The government's getting a lot of pressure to act on it, and they're getting pressure from the other side to leave it alone. So it's
Yeah, I mean, like for example, I get sold on all kinds of software as a business owner. I have vendors that are reaching out and trying to sell me things. A lot of times I see their PowerPoints or I see their proposals and they look AI generated. I'm just like, give me something, that looks like a human generated it. I value that.
No, no, I hear you. And I do agree with what you said earlier. I just having a discussion with somebody about that recently. If you're a plumber, a carpenter, and some of the other things that you mentioned, it's going to be hard for AI to touch that for a long time.
Yeah, for sure, for a long time. But I do think the landscape will change and there will be some job losses, but I think there will be a lot of gains too. Um, there's a lot of opportunity, and so I think you just have to, be informed. And one of the opportunities is to invest in crypto and invest in AI, and AI companies as well. Um, I think, that's one way to adjust.
I agree. Well, let's talk about, as I tell you, there's more and more people getting convinced that they need to look for alternatives. And this is another reason why I think crypto is going to see a huge upsurge. So if they want to come to My Digital Money, what would you tell them about getting started? Let's walk the novice through the
Yeah,
process.
I would say you go on mydigitalmoney.com, you click get started. It's about 5 minutes to fill out an application, and we have a US-based team that you can also call if you have any questions as you're going through it. Essentially, you're opening up either a self-directed IRA, which lets you hold Bitcoin outside the traditional banking system, with the tax advantages of an IRA, or you can do a regular cash account as well. You can buy fractional gold and silver in there, so it's different than the physical gold and silver, although you can redeem for gold and silver later, but it's much more liquid, right? So you can buy and sell quickly if you want. So it's
Okay.
basically digital assets in an IRA. Yeah, once you get your account, you basically just log on and buy and sell anything. And again, you can call us and we'll help you buy and sell if you have an issue. But It's really simple to use. But it's a kind of a hybrid. Like you're not completely on your own like you are with companies like Coinbase. We're there to answer any questions you have.
No, I know your customer service is really good, and the fact that they're based in America makes it a lot easier. I can't tell you and no offense intended, but spending time with c customer help, customer service, and it's overseas, and you're really having a hard time understanding. No insult intended, but it's
Yeah,
so frustrating to deal with. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you were saying. Can you repeat that?
yeah,
And you might say that 10 times in a discussion about your computer. And it drives me crazy. This is one of the things I appreciate about what you do.
yeah.
This is really the time, in my humble opinion, to get involved. And we're having that discussion in our family right now to the positive. So let's
And
give
and
out
and, and I think to mention also one thing just
go ahead.
before I forget, the cold storage is a big thing, where your assets are offline. And the reason why I say that right now is because one of my friends, this is a true story. She was holding her crypto, outside of exchange, like in a wallet, which has its merits as well. But someone pretended to be Coinbase and basically uh hacked into her account, into her wallet. And it's a hot wallet, right? But if it was a cold wallet, it wouldn't have happened. And so she got, scammed out of her everything that was in her account. So with us, it's very safe. We do it in a safe way. And I think, with all the scams, it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, you just made me think of that CIA agent that was just arrested for having, what, $40 million of gold bars in his house. That's the guy that'll hack your account and take it out of hot storage, out of the wallet.
Hmm.
That's why I would never do crypto without cold storage. I think that's absolutely the most safe alternative.
Exactly. So I think it's very possible to do when you're doing it with a retirement account because you don't need to buy and sell every day. Um, the downside is it takes a day to settle, right? But a day is fine if you're not day trading like every hour. You're buying, selling.
You
So
can't
our
do that
account,
with crypto, guy. I know I don't need to tell you that. I'm saying it for the benefit of the audience.
yeah.
But it's not the stock market, you're not a hedge fund guy. This crypto runs in waves, and you got to
Yeah.
ride the wave. You got to ride the wave.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it if you're a day trader, but you have to really like look at technical analysis, and that's not our customers. Our customers are there to believe in the longevity
Exactly.
and yeah, and I think that allows you to take advantage of doing it securely, the cold storage, right? So,
No, I totally agree with you. And even if the Democrats were to win both houses and the presidency in 2028, I don't see this changing. Because
mhm.
what do you want to
Oh,
do? No, we want to stay with what's failing. I
right.
mean,
Yeah, there's no way to
that's not
do
going
it.
to happen.
There's no way to reverse it now. Um, the
No.
people have spoken, the institutions are in. So, uh, yeah, even now, like the Clarity Act, right? It's the next bill that's going to be approved that really tells you what is a security and what's a commodity and who's governing each of those. That just passed the Senate, and you had Democrats getting on board. So it's really become bipartisan, and hopefully that fully passes sometime by the end of the year. That will also help adoption. So get
I
in before that happens, and before the rate goes down, and before the crash. You got to get in while it's boring. It's been moving a little bit sideways, so this is the time.
It
No
really
financial
is.
advice here, though.
No, I
Yeah.
know, but I'm going to tell you one thing that I've seen, and I understand why Trump did it, and I would have probably done the same thing. But he keeps talking, well, there's going to be a peace deal with Iran, and he's done it three times now,
Oh my goodness.
and it's
Yeah, every day.
affected the futures market, which has kept the daily price of oil down significantly. But how many times can you cry wolf before people say, "I'm not listening to this guy again"? Because there's
Totally.
probably not going to be a
Yes.
peace deal in the near future. So, really, folks, this problem in the Middle East is not going to go away. And even if it did go away, the effects are going to be with us for a while. I read an account from the Wall Street Journal. They said that from the time that we stopped the war, they estimate 64 weeks of recovery.
Yep.
That's just amazing. That's why people need alternatives. Let's give out the contact information for My Digital Money.
Yeah, so it's mydigitalmoney.com, or you can call 833-636-2008. And again, that's 833-MDM-2008.
Yeah, I love the two. Yeah, the last four
2008.
we've talked
Avoid the
about that
crash.
before. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly. Well, guys, it's been very informative. I appreciate you coming on, and I feel like we're just beginning to see the rise, and we're going to see a tsunami, I think, of crypto investment coming up in the near future. So I think people who listen to this broadcast are benefiting because you're getting the word before it hits the streets.
Absolutely. And
Okay, well,
thanks
thanks
again
for
for the
joining
opportunity.
us. That's been very
Anytime.
informative. Take care.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.